Okay. Hello, everyone. As Ryan said, my name is Elizabeth Saunders. I'm a licensed therapist. My specific degree is a master's in social work, and then I've been practicing in therapy for over a decade. And I've been here at CSU Pueblo. This is the start of my third year. And yeah, my office space is based out of the Campus Counseling Center, and we are in IHHI building on the first floor. The topic I wanted to talk about today is this idea of imposter syndrome, and also providing some antidote to that as some practices of ways to cultivate mindfulness and self-compassion. And I think we hear these terms in pop culture, but feeling like we have some concrete ways to integrate that practice into our lives. And also, I'll kind of check into the chat, but feel free to unmute yourself or just like shout out if you have a question. I can't see everyone's faces for some reason. So if you did the hand raise, I might not see it, but all right, here we go. So our objectives of talking today are first to make sure we'll have a shared understanding of the definition of what the phrase imposter syndrome means, maybe explore a little of how it has come about historically and what contributes in our culture. And then thinking about how our brain works and how we can engage our brain to create new neural pathways so we can think different thoughts and practice psychological flexibility so that changing our thoughts feels a little easier every time we try to do it. And that includes integrating practices of self-care and self-compassion. This is kind of a long clip, but I'm going to play it because I just feel like it showcases this concept so perfectly. So this is from the television show Friends. And could someone unmute and just say like, yeah, we could see the YouTube. Anyway.
We can see it.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
Good afternoon. Are you the decision maker of the house? Do you currently own a set of encyclopedias?
No, but try the classifieds. People sell everything in there.
Actually, I'm not buying, I'm selling. Let me ask you one question. Do your friends ever have a conversation and you just nod along even though you're not really sure what they're talking about?
I'm telling you, it's totally unconstitutional.
I totally agree. It is.
Yeah.
I think he deserves a Nobel Prize.
No.
I mean, it was like the Algonquin kids' table.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. You haven't said anything for about 2.5 minutes. Are you at all interested?
Yeah, well, yeah. Come on in.
So, here's somebody interesting, Joey. What do you know about Van Gogh?
He cut off his ear.
And
I'm out.
he painted that.
Wow, that's pretty nice. I thought he cut off his ear because he sucked. Well, what else you got in there?
Let's see, where does the Pope live?
In the woods. No, wait, that's the joke answer.
Actually, it's Vatican City. Now, what do you know about vulcanized rubber?
Sparks birth control.
You need these books.
Well, there's a lot I didn't know about vomit. In a minute.
So, what do you say, Joey? You get the whole set of encyclopedias for $1,200. That works out to just $50 a book.
$1,200? You think I have $1,200? I'm home in the middle of the day, and I got patio furniture in my living room. I guess there's a few things you don't get from book learning.
Well, what can you swing?
How about 0 down and 0 a month for a long, long time?
You don't have anything.
You want to see what I got? Okay. I got a baby Tootsie Roll, a movie stub, keys, a Kleenex, a rock, and an army man. Hey.
Okay, I get the picture. Thanks for your time.
And a 50. Huh. These must be Chandler's pants.
For $50, you can get 1 book. What'll it be? A, B, C?
No, I think I'm going to stick with the V. I want to see how this bad boy turns out.
So did you break up with Joanna?
I think so.
Now, it's a good thing you got out when you did, before she blew up like that Vesuvius.
The volcano?
Yeah. And speaking of volcanoes, man, are they a violent igneous rock formation.
What?
Oh, yeah, lava spewing, hot ash. Of course, some are dormant.
Why are you talking about volcanoes all of a sudden?
Well, we can talk about something else. What do you want to talk about? Vivisection? The vas deferens? The Vietnam War?
Oh, did anybody see that documentary on the Korean War?
Oh, God, Korea is such a beautiful country.
With such a sad history.
Yeah.
Could there be more Kims?
All right. I appreciate you hanging in for that clip. So, like I said, I feel like that perfectly encapsulates the feelings we all get when we are in an imposter syndrome mindset, is the way poor Joey feels in that whole bit. So, defining imposter syndrome, what sorts of feelings does that include? It's a feeling like we are a fraud. It's a feeling of anxiety or heightened anticipation that someone's gonna, quote unquote, find out we don't belong wherever we are, or somehow we got the job or the promotion or the grade we got as some sort of mistake, like everyone must be able to see through us. And having a hard time to internalize the accomplishments we have made. And so if we look at it from a behavioral research or anthropological kind of standpoint, these characteristics and this terminology started showing up in research in the last half of the last century, and kind of increasing over the last 15 years. The kind of interesting paradox of that is that it first began showing up in women and members of ethnic minority groups. And I think that really illustrates the paradox, which is that historically, these are groups of people who may not have been invited to the table, or who may not have historical practice being in leadership roles. And society until recently has reinforced, no, you don't have the skills to do this, or maybe you aren't good enough to do this. And so feeling like actually we do belong, we want to invite everyone to the table. And yeah, the irony that the people who generally feel this are generally far from imposters and have had to fight and prove themselves really hard and go above and beyond to get where they are today. I think some other interesting things to bring awareness to for why this feeling persists today is that there's simply an impossible amount of information to keep up with. So another example specific to my field is that even 20 years ago, when people would graduate with a psychology degree, research up until that point was generally shared via published quarterly journal magazines or in published books or at conferences. And those are happening, again, quarterly, maybe conferences once a year, and over, new theories not being developed, more than once every 10 years. And now a lot of people will graduate in my field or express thoughts that how could they simply know every single theory and every single way to intervene with people and all of the knowledge base? And so much of that is a blessing and a curse of the technology we have today, which makes it seem as though we should know the constant stream of information that's coming out. But it's coming out at a rate faster than we've ever had to ingest information before because of the accessibility of the internet and the interconnectedness of our world. There's also this pressure that comes when you are one of these groups that historically has not been able to represent yourself and your culture, is that we feel this pressure then to say, wow, I'm the first of my whatever, complete the sentence, my culture, my generation, my family, my community, to be able to do this. And then that kind of puts this compounded pressure to feel like we have to do the work of everyone who has come before us and wasn't quite able to reach that point. I think there's also, which again, pros and cons, increased sense of our social and self-awareness. So with trying to build self-awareness and being more mindful of how we engage with others in the world and being more thoughtful, we can also take that pendulum and it can swing all the way in the other direction to where we're almost hyper aware of like, oh, will me showing up at this meeting make anyone uncomfortable? Or do I have to say, you know, use the perfect language every time? What if I misspeak and offend someone? Again, good things to be aware of, but it can also pass a point of being helpful to really inhibiting us because we're so hyper-focused on being perfectly socially and aware and acceptable. I think, again, there's tons of marketing and social media, and y'all probably hear this all over the place, but you know, the idea that everything we're constantly being fed on social media makes it look like people are accomplishing superhuman feats every single day. And so just even the simple reminder of the things people are putting online are cultivated and very purposeful, and many are not showing the reality behind what's allowing them to meet sometimes what look like unreasonable or unreachable standards. And then the part that I'll spend a decent amount of time on today is the brain's tendency to a negativity bias. And what this means is it's the part of our brain that persists biologically from before human beings, you know, from 500 years ago, when we still were really more dependent on our senses to tell us when we were in danger and to always be on the lookout for being excluded from the group, because exclusion from the group meant starving and getting cold. Or, you know, our brain scanning the horizon for danger. That part of our brain still persists. And so we just as humans have a natural proclivity towards the dangerous, the unknown, and making it bigger, and tend to not, to have to more consciously focus on the positive things going on, because then we're afraid to let our guard down. I'm just going to pause really quick. Does anyone have any questions or comments at the moment? Okay. All right. Oops. Let me see. Okay. So let's say we grow awareness and say, this really does match the way that I think sometimes, or have been really stuck in these types of thoughts. So what is our goal? How would we like to think and exist in the world? I believe one is to just be able to accept that there's no way to keep up with it all. Also, to kind of relate back to that clip of Joey from Friends, which a lot of social scientists today would say is preferential, is prioritizing human relationships over proving expertise. And so I think historically, when we think of people in leadership positions or kind of climbing ladders, whatever that looks like, is that we need to have all the knowledge to prove that we belong there. But really, people like Adam Grant and Brene Brown, those are names if this is something that's interesting to you to look up or follow on social media, that say that actually when they do research around what people respect in leaders, it's not in fact people that have all the answers, but people that prioritize humanizing themselves. So connecting to people one-on-one, having real human relationships, with people, respecting where each other are at, rather than everyone having to have all of the answers. I think this one, you know, is something we're taught even when we're young, of kind of not comparing to everybody else. But I think it is really important to remember that we're each on our own path to success, and that looks very different for each of us. And being thoughtful and bringing awareness to when we're comparing, well, someone else is getting these grades on a paper and I'm only getting these grades. I know there can be nuanced reasons for that, but also keeping in mind, like, well, that person, the steps they have after this might require those A's. And if my path after this doesn't require A's, then maybe my measures for success are going to be different. Maybe my measures for success are, am I showing up every day? Am I making professional connections? And then, of course, what I hope for all of this, why I go into the field and what I think could be a useful takeaway is just to free us all up from perfectionist thinking and making the idea of changing course or having plans disruptive and being presented with new options can feel less fearful and more exciting. Okay, so I'll talk about 2 mental processes needed where we have to really consciously bring awareness to this and say, and know that we need to do certain exercises to encourage that brain growth. This concept is generative change. This process is what allows our brain to evolve, make new neural connections, and thus come up with new ideas. So breaking it down, obviously, is to generate, is to create. And this is what kind of jumpstarts creative thinking in our brain. So I have one more little video that I will share that talks about this concept.
This is a story of human motivation. Humans are motivated equally in 2 directions. To move away from things we don't want, and to move towards things we do want. And this is a jolly good idea. It's a particularly good idea for things happening in the external world. But then humans invented language, and we developed words for things, including things happening in our internal world, like thoughts and emotions. And then we applied the same rule. Being clever, we classified difficult feelings like anxiety, doubt, and uncertainty as things to move away from, and emotions like happiness, excitement, and relief as things to move towards. This makes intuitive sense. But applying the away and towards rule to our internal world leads to problems. Think about something you've done that you're really proud of, like running a marathon or passing an exam. And then think about the early days or moments when you were moving towards this achievement. What were your thoughts and emotions then? The short-term result of moving towards something we really value is usually negative thoughts and uncomfortable emotions. So our minds tell us to move away, just as if we saw a bear or a moving bus. Then, if we do move away, the first emotion that shows up is relief. So to summarize, language has encouraged us to try and move away from bad or difficult thoughts and emotions and to move towards good ones. But this is a trap, because it can mean we move away from what matters most to us in life. This is called experiential avoidance. Experiential avoidance can work in the short term, but the problem is it doesn't tend to work in the long term. If we make it a priority to avoid difficult emotions, we start to construct our lives around avoiding things we don't want rather than moving towards things we do want. So what do we do about this? In order to beat experiential avoidance, we firstly have to understand what our values really look like. What do we really want from life? Then we need to help people to build their willingness here, to experience these difficult thoughts and emotions in order to keep moving towards here. We can't have love without fear of rejection. We can't achieve greatly without fear of failure, and we can't change our lives for the better without worrying that we will change for the worst. There is no way around this. It is the human condition. But we can cultivate the ability to experience difficult thoughts and emotions in the service of what matters most to us. This is called psychological flexibility. Psychological flexibility helps us build a life around towards moves rather than away moves. Whilst this can hurt, we get to do the things in life that matter most, and this makes a difference.
All right, so. Okay, so I really like understanding human behavior through some of these, through exploring how our brain tends to work, because it helps alleviate the guilt of like, what am I doing wrong? Because nothing, I'm not doing anything wrong. My brain is just primed to keep me safe. And so some of this process is the process of growing awareness of when the times my brain is trying to encourage me to do things that will keep it safe, but that's not actually true. It's a myth. The brain just doesn't want to feel that brief time of discomfort. But then when we are able to move through the discomfort and get to the values-based goal, that's enough to create a new neural connection. And then we can experience the joy of meeting a goal. So again, that's the psychological flexibility that we talk about, and psychological flexibility is the measure of how people are grow the skill of being able to adapt to changing situations. They help make the connections in our brain that rather than as humans, we're primed to see maybe as black and white or all good and all bad, that help us reconfigure our mental resources. So knowing, we might say, oh, my car is broken down. There's nothing I can do. I might as well go back to bed today. And then when we're able to bring awareness to the situation of, gosh, this is a real pain, but I actually can move through the discomfort of texting my neighbor to see if they can give me a ride, even though their car smells. I don't know. It just is the ability to engage that different part of our brain that's able to problem solve when it's not in a fight or flight response. So what are the practical things we can do to, at first, this process may not be natural to a lot of us. It might take a week, or we may not be able to move through that moment. We might just have to let time pass. The idea is that with every time this comes up in our life, the time it takes to move from experiencing the stuckness, the frustration, the imposter syndrome of, I shouldn't even be here in the first place. No wonder I can't figure this out. The idea is to get from that way of thinking to the, wait a second, I think maybe I can find a third option for getting out of this. Doing these exercises just on the regular when we're not in a crisis situation can then help our brain start defaulting to a different process. So one way to do this is just to learn a new thing every day. And for this, I feel like, for any of these things, I really always am thoughtful in my therapy practice with people and with myself. It goes back to the idea of like everyone in the month of January wants to join a gym and is going to go from exercising never to exercising every day of the week, which I'll say for myself is like probably not the most realistic goal. So I really encourage, like, I'm going to use the term lazy, which I don't usually, but really lazy, like the teeniest, tiniest step to change where we could maybe be a little successful, I think is better than setting something really lofty that we're not really able to succeed and then abandon because we don't have data to show that we could do it. So when I go through these bullets of like learn a new thing every day, that might be something as simple as like adding one new Instagram account to your feed, which every day doesn't even mean actively doing something. It just means the odds of you seeing something that present, maybe on a topic that you've been wanting to learn more about, but don't really know. I've been watching that show Wrexham. Does anybody know about this? The Scottish soccer team. Anyway, so maybe for me, that might be adding, an Instagram account about soccer. And then just randomly throughout the day, I'm getting something in my feed that isn't normally there. Being the first to start a conversation. So instead of waiting for people in my class to say hello or ask if the seat next to me is taken, very purposefully initiating engagements. And again, if that's really hard for you, maybe you do that once a month or, once a year. I'm a big fan of this one, and it's a little easier now that we have Google Maps, which is just changing up the routine. So even something as simple as exiting your driveway, if you usually pull out so that you're facing the left, pull out so you're facing the right. And even if it's a cul-de-sac, drive around the cul-de-sac. Just even letting your eyes and brain see the way that you're driving to work every day can be really good for your brain to not get scared when it sees things in a new way. The last thing that we'll end this presentation with is a little mindfulness exercise. But the more we can become more detailed about the actual emotion we're feeling, that can be really helpful too. So we may not have grown up in a household or in a community or a culture that encouraged us to verbalize when we wake up feeling sad. And so I might go through my day being really short with people and feeling like there's a lump in my throat all day, and feeling like every time I see a certain person that I'm going to burst into tears. But I've not given that the language of, I am feeling sad today. And so the power that just labeling the specific emotion you're feeling, rather than just, oh, I'm in a bad mood or nothing's going my way. If I can say, man, I'm feeling sad today, then my brain can start filling in the things that go with sadness. So then it helps find a pathway through the sadness rather than a non-specific categorization of how we're feeling. And then the next exercise, which is the practice of compassion. But first I want to talk about why having self-compassion historically and culturally can feel like we're so hard. So even if I say we must have compassion for the struggles, we must have compassion for the hard emotions, some of you, some of us, and it might depend on the day or the time, might have a resistance to this. I think sometimes we have a dialogue in our culture about sort of compassion versus tough love, kind of, or criticism, which would be the opposite of compassion. And I think it's important to explore where that comes from. And I think it comes from myths such as, well, gosh, self-compassion is just feeling sorry for yourself. Or if you can't overcome this quickly and without, being soft about it, that must be a weakness. Or compassion's just an excuse for not wanting to do something hard. I think don't beat yourself up if that is a way you think about it. And I just want to gently challenge that thinking with actual research that's been done on human behavior. And so when researchers look at how a person feels, if they offer themselves and try to create behavior change through compassion versus trying to create behavior change through shaming and criticism, the research actually shows worse results. So the effects of criticism, which include guilt and shaming, eventually result in a loss of confidence, a fear of failure. It keeps people stuck in the perfectionist mindset instead of giving them practice to not necessarily be perfect. And a lot of research around how shame works to change behavior shows that shame does not create as much positive behavior change as compassion. And then, of course, we see direct links to this to mental health diagnoses of maybe stress that could be temporary starts to become something more persistent, like a diagnosis of depression or persistent anxiety. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this topic? Okay. So when I am talking about compassion, there are 3 parts, and I'll break it down in the 3 steps in the following slides. But integrating a little exercise like this for yourself, and again, whether it's just a more regular thing, maybe something that you do every day that you check in about, or whether it's something that you just implement and maybe have written on a note card or a screenshot in your phone, to help you when you're in a moment of that negative thinking and wondering if you, if everyone else somehow has it figured out better than you do. So the 3 components of engaging in that self-compassion exercise is to befriend the distress and suffering. So as in that video, to continue moving toward the distress and the discomfort as soon as you figured out that it's not a safety related worry, it's an emotional challenge that your brain is trying to move away from. And then to recognize the universality of it. So this practice of saying, not only is this, like, this isn't just me, this is part of the human experience, and literally every human has this experience. So it doesn't make me any more weak, any less than. And then being able to have some stock phrases to offer that support to yourself, because we can't always access it externally, like ask someone else to say just the right thing to us. So this is what it looks like broken down into steps. Step 1 is we have to call it what it is, and the important part is to do that without judgment. So to keep it general, if you are not someone who likes to use the more specific language of this is a moment of sadness, this is a moment of grief, we could just say, this is a moment of suffering. I'm having a moment of suffering. The instinct might be to cover it up with a judgment, like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm having a really hard day and it's all my fault. No, take away the parts that offer a value or a judgment. This is mindfulness. Mindfulness is an attempt to label what is in the moment. Other options can include just very simple, like ouch, or just acknowledging, man, this hurts in my heart, or this is stress. Step 2 then is practicing acceptance and relating it to the universality of the life experience. So this connects us to the rest of humanity by remembering I'm not alone and we all struggle in our lives. So in both parts together, this might look like me saying, oof, this feels like stress today. And I'm not alone. I bet everyone around campus is struggling at this point of the semester. And then step 3 is preparing whatever phrase you need in the moment. So I always say, in a time of non-stress, just brainstorming some ideas of what feels really good when I am in that emotional state. What do I need to hear right now? These are just some generic ones, but may I learn to accept myself in this moment? May I be strong? May I be patient? I have a favorite that I found a couple of years ago when I started something outside of therapy that was a new skill. And I continue to use it pretty frequently still. And it is okay for others to see me struggle as I learn something new. I feel like that's something that I would say to a kid learning a new sport, or anyone learning a new skill. I would be able to easily watch someone else learning a new skill and say, of course, they're going to struggle learning this new skill. I don't, that's how we learn. And so to give myself permission and say, I'm okay with others seeing me go through this struggle to learn this new skill. Does anyone feel like they would love to share one they already use or have? No pressure. I'll just pause for like 10 seconds. Okay. Here's one final idea or brainstorm around this imposter syndrome is those feelings persist when we forget to capture our successes. And we have successes every day. I can say that with complete confidence. It may not be the picture we have of success that's that perfectionist mindset, but it's really important that we capture any small success every day. Some days that might be, oh man, I moved from my bed to my couch. Good for me. That involved changing my scenery at home. So again, that's this might involve taking credit for something we did. Something we tend to do as humans is we'll generally tend to take credit for things that go wrong, but we have this like cultural humility part ingrained to us that's like, stay humble, you know, you don't want to sound like you're bragging. But it's really important to remind your brain, like, oh, I did take these actions to contribute to this success that got me. I did get this A because I worked hard at some point or another. And it's not just maybe because like, oh, well, maybe this teacher just likes me, or maybe I got this job because somebody knows my uncle or aunt, right? Like making really sure you say like, no, I took the steps that I needed to get to where I am in this spot. I think writing it down is really helpful. That way you can see the words written on paper. And if you're having a hard time accessing it mentally, you can at least read it. So put it on a Post-it note in your medicine cabinet and just remember what your successes are. I think verbalizing it to another person is always great, especially if it's a healthy person who will be able to respond with, holy shit, that's awesome. Good job. And then taking a conscious minute to breathe and capture that feeling of accomplishment, this allows your brain to actually integrate it. And so there are processes that help our brain make memories more permanent, and those involve using our senses and pausing in the moment and not letting whatever the next moment is run into that success, because then your brain kind of has a hard time saving and capturing it. All right, and we found ourselves here at the end, but just, I think I've kind of restated a lot of these themes, but just to summarize, feelings of being an imposter come from historically external sources and persist in the form of mostly internal sources. The feelings are absolutely more universal than we think. So anytime you're like, I must be the only one who feels that way, you can rest assured that you are not. Our negative inner dialogue, which is based on our brain's biological tendency to see the negative, might not be accurately reflecting the facts. And so our job is to engage a different part of our brain by identifying the thoughts and feelings that we do have control over so that we can change that inner dialogue to more accurately reflect the facts. And then using any of the things I mentioned for daily self-care and self-compassion to help make the default of your brain have a tendency to pause before jumping into that negative inner dialogue. So just a message of encouragement, which is at the end of the day, please remember you are here for a reason, whether here is at CSU Pueblo, whether here is at the place you're at in your job or your family, in this program, your work, your life, you are all worthy. You are better than you think you are, smarter than you think you are, and you know more than you give yourself credit for. So we have to remember that and remind yourself as often as you need to. Just my general, of course, invitation, which is we are here at the Counseling Center. As Ryan and I were talking about at the beginning, we are a group of 5 therapists and an additional medication prescriber and an additional support person who can do acupuncture appointments to talk about any of these things. You know, we're happy to just talk about these ideas, even if you're like, well, I'm not really feeling that bad. We would love for you to stop in and talk about anything of interest, all the way to if you ever find yourself in a place of struggling, your student fees have covered you to have access to us here at the Counseling Center. So I will share this PowerPoint so that you have any of this information available to you, and especially that last slide, which is a way to come and connect with us. And let me move out of here and turn it back over.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for doing this today, and thank you students for coming to these. I love seeing you guys actually show up for these and get something out of it. And then Elizabeth, I got a couple of things out of this. A direct quote from you that stuck with me is, "We are each on our own path to success." I think that one's especially important today, especially with the social media and just kind of seeing everyone only posting the good things or the things that they can kind of flex on. And it's really hard to kind of move past that sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. And then another thing that I really enjoyed you speaking about was continuing to move towards the distress and comfort as long as it's not harming. That's something I've been working on lately, is just kind of occasionally it's the dishes or even just cleaning the house. Like, I know I'll feel so much better after I actually do that. That's just kind of that compartmentalizing. I need to get this done so I can feel better and move towards my actual goals.
I love that so much. Yes. So yeah, sometimes the phrase that I feel or use for that is like, this discomfort is only temporary. Like, and sometimes even I'll think of a timeline, like this discomfort will probably last for 20 minutes or something. Like, if you know the amount, like going and sitting through this 50-minute class is going to hurt my skin, but it's 50 minutes. Like, I can manage this discomfort. So, and then growing the skills that we need to, get through doing the dishes for 20 minutes. Like, how do we make that as comfortable as possible? Should I bring my radio into the kitchen with me? Should I put on my comfy socks first? Right. So yeah, I appreciate those. Thank you so much for sharing. Did anyone else want to share anything?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Helga. Yeah, I just want to thank you. That was a great workshop, and I love all the little drawings and the psychology behind it. And I do see Marla at your health center for therapy every couple of weeks and for acupuncture. And I have to say that's been a great support and very helpful.
Oh, thank you for sharing so that others can know what sorts of resources we have over here.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Well, if you don't have anything else, I'll let you go for the day.
Sounds good. And yeah, I'll send this, do you want me to send this PowerPoint along?
Yeah, that would be great. I will send it to everyone and I'll send the recording as well.
Sounds great. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.